Check, check. All right. I guess we can start. So welcome everyone to this beautiful Saturday evening. Very happy to see all of you here, friends, colleagues, students. That's a really nice crowd we gathered here today. So I'm Benjamin. Most of you know me already. I've been organizing with Fred from the Austrian Forum these kinds of events for a year at this point right now. And just a bit to the idea of these events. Our goal was initially to kind of combine culture and games and underline this here, offering a kind of platform to exchange enthusiasm and passion about games as a profession, as a hobby, talking about different aspects of video games and culture, but also keep the design and development angle of it. That's why we also started to have playtests here, since, well, can't understand video games properly if you don't play them. So, in that regards, it's great that the Austrian Forum has been providing its facilities and infrastructure to organize this, also the Polish-Japanese Academy of Information Technology, so please give it up for them providing the space and the infrastructure. Thank you. All right, so why are we here and what are we going to encounter at this evening? So a couple of months back, my friend Jaroslav, the leader of the Belarusian game dev community here in Warsaw, invited me to an event at Robim Razem, so the Belarusian Community Center, and said like, "Oh, Benjamin, you need to come. There's going to be Michał Mochocki there giving a talk." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, he worked on the game Beast. He was a writer there, and he's a professor, a philologist. I'm like, what? For any person who has dealt with game studies, it's like kind of a dream to do academia and research and also be able to shape how a game works and ends up. So went there, saw Michał, got to know him, and was very happy to invite him for this event. I called up Fred and said like, we have to do this. And yeah, we're here to talk today about Michał's work on Beast, about narrative design and writing in general, and also highlight the aspect how heritage and culture can be integrated in a video game. So in that regards, introducing you to Michał Mochocki. He's a professor and doctor of philology. He's a narratologist by trade from the University of Bydgoszcz. He's going to well, introduce you to the world of narrative design and writing for games, but also I'd like to thank Piotr Pachinko, who's the CEO and creative director of False Prophet, to providing us the possibility to also showcase his game and being also here present today. So during the QA, he will also come up on stage and you will have the possibility to ask him some questions about the game. So in that regards, basically enjoy the talk, which will take around an hour. So please keep your questions for after the talk, for the QA session. And afterwards, feel free to not leave already, but to mingle around and network to some complimentary Austrian wine. In that regards, Michał, the stage is yours.
Hello, Warsaw. Are you having a good time? Let's see if this clicker works. It doesn't look like it. Okay. Right, as Benjamin introduced me, you know that I wear two hats. I'm an academic and I'm also a creative writer. I was the lead writer on the Beast False Prophet project. And my plan for this evening is first to bore you to death with some academic theory, and then slowly start resurrecting you with more design-oriented practical stuff. Eventually, in the end, maybe, just maybe, we will have time for some juicy anecdotes from behind the scenes Beast. Let's roll. No. The academic theory is called heritage ludonarratology, my own name. Sorry about that. I had to find a name for my combination of transmedia narratology, which is the study of narratives in different media, games included, game studies, specifically games, and heritage studies. Why do I need to bring heritage studies to the mix? Well, if I study narrative in games, which means story world, characters, plots, lore, Sometimes these games are based on historical settings. So if a game is narrative-driven, I can use narratology. If the game is narrative-driven and includes history or heritage, it works like a little bit like heritage fiction. I can also use the tools of heritage studies to study the circulation of social memory, collective identities related to nationalities, ethnicities, etc. Everything that can be labeled heritage. Most of my methodology is based on 2 publications, which explain the details. If you are students in game studies or heritage studies, you can follow my publications. But before we get to heritage ludonarratology, I'd like to add one more element to the mix. Marketing. Why do we need experiential marketing? You can see 5 verbs. Verbs are super useful in analyzing everything that follows. These verbs explain ways in which we experience the world and life in general. The idea from Ben Schmidt behind the experiential marketing is that whenever you are designing marketing campaigns for a product or a service, you should try to stimulate the audience through all 5 channels. Well, when you are advertising perfume, you would appeal to the senses, the sense of smell. If you are advertising a survival camp, you would appeal to physical action, activities, but you could also appeal to relationships, teamwork, forming friendships. You could also appeal to the philosophical, psychological sense of emotion, feeling, accomplishment, testing yourself. So any marketing, any product, any service can be based on just a single module of experience, or it may activate 2, 3, possibly all 5. I wish to connect the 5 verbs to 5 dimensions of authenticity in experiences facilitated by heritage. I don't know if you can see, I am still struggling with the clicker. Yes, I was trying to get to this slide. The 5 dimensions of authenticity have been borrowed from tourist studies. Why tourism? Tourism includes cultural tourism, visits to museums, to festivals, to heritage events. And we can imagine how it works, for example, when you visit an open-air museum with living interactors, and the whole experience is designed to feel authentic to the audiences. One part, one dimension of authenticity is felt in the body. It's bodily feelings type of authenticity. When you are shooting a crossbow, your muscles work, you can feel the sensations. When you are learning how to fight with a saber, the body performs these physical activities, you get a visceral sensation, you're actually doing the thing. Physical performance feels authentic because it resonates with the body. Self-making type is philosophical. It is described in the literature as resonating with one's true self. For example, if you identify as a horse rider, then the act of practicing horse riding, in addition to its physical quality, will also resonate with you because you are performing your identity by doing the thing that you like. You see yourself as a rider. When you ride a horse, you feel truly yourself. That's the philosophical circle. If you identify as a person who does specific things, by doing these things, you are performing the identity that you like to feel. Interpersonal authenticity is felt in sharing the experience with others. It has 2 layers. A part of it is felt when you are playing or visiting the site with others, immediate interactions with people co-sharing this experience. Another dimension, or another part of this dimension, is when you are after the experience and you want to talk about it with others. You are sharing your thoughts, your emotions, your memories with others. This is all labeled existential type of authenticity. Now let's jump to the bottom, objective type, because this one is the easiest to explain. In the context of heritage, especially physical heritage, objective authenticity resides in the object. If you come to a museum and you are in the presence of an original artifact, which is not a replica, it's not a copy, it's the actual thing which was created in the past and preserved to this day, its authenticity is objective. So it's the most obvious in case of buildings, architectural heritage, and museum artifacts, museum collections. By the way, we can't have that in a video game. In video games, we only have digital recreations, digital images of original artifacts, so we won't be dealing with that in my tonight's talk. Right. The largest and most complex dimension of authenticity is called constructive. Why is it so difficult to explain? Because it is entirely subjective. Please note the line. It is subjectively constructed as authentic in the person's head. In other words, if you come to something historical, a historical reenactment, a historical game, a historical costume, a historical festival with songs and dance, how can you tell that the performance or the object looks authentic, is authentic? How do you make the judgment? You compare it to what you already believe to be authentic about that historical period or about that historical heritage. This means that a trained historian who has access to reliable sources can make judgments of detailed accuracy, but a regular person who does not study history has their image of a historical past, a historical setting shaped by what? Movies, like costume dramas, films, games, education, yeah, what you have misremembered from school textbooks in history classes, maybe museum excursions. So we will get to more details. I don't want to stop for too long in this slide. Just remember for the moment that this part of authenticity is subjective. It's not based on strictly accurate measurements. It's based on what people know or think they know, believe that, for example, the Middle Ages were like. Jumping from museums and heritage festivals to games requires one more slide. It's not games yet. Please see how I align some of these or all of these 5 experiential modules from marketing to dimensions of authenticity. And I ask you to imagine a visit to a living history site with open museum. You have buildings, you have museum staff dressed up in costumes, interacting in roles as characters with you. You have replica weapons, tools of the trade which you can practice. This site can stimulate you through all 5 channels. You can experience bodily feelings type of authenticity if you take a pottery class, or you help in the kitchen, or you can, I don't know, try to ride a horse or shoot a bow and arrow. Self-making, authenticity, finding your true self or being truly yourself, well, this is highly subjective. If you came to this site because you come from a culture whose historical experience is commemorated, you will feel that you're in the right place because you are activating a sense of your own identity by interacting with your heritage. If you are a parent who likes to educate their kids and you are bringing your kid to the site for educational purpose, you would be feeling that you are performing your duty as a parent, resonating with what you want to see yourself as a good parent that cares for education. It is highly subjective and may not be related directly to history, but to some other social duties. But you can also react in this self-confirming way by making ethical judgments of what you are being shown in the museum site. For example, you see role-playing scenes about arranged marriage. And as a feminist, for example, you would make ethical, moral judgments on this kind of social system. And your ideological, political stance will be confirmed by engaging emotionally, mentally with a part of the narrative and defining yourself as a supporter or critic. I'm simplifying, and it's not the whole picture. We will be revealing more details of this dimension as we go through the lecture. How about relation, interpersonal sharing? If you are visiting the site with friends, you are getting this feedback loop from their actions, their reactions to whatever is around you, and you will be communicating with them on site. This is the interpersonal dimension, and as you can guess, I talked about the parenthood, about being there with children or being there with friends. Everything which is meaningful to you in this self-making sense personally can easily spill into interpersonal if you comment on this experience to others. If you turn this individual, intellectual, emotional, personal experience into a shared experience. Personal translates to interpersonal. Thinking, the constructive authenticity is in the judgment of whatever is around you in this heritage site as you compare it to your existing knowledge of the historical period, knowledge of films about this period. I think I explained that in the previous slide, so I can jump to the next one. But we also have sense. Sensory experience is the perception of smells, sight, tastes, whatever is delivered in the heritage site. You can tell that a physical heritage site has more to offer in terms of sensory stimulation than a digital game. You can't have taste, you can't have smell in the game. There is limited way to engage with the sense of touch in a digital game. You mostly rely on the audio visuals. Why is the objective authenticity crossed out? I told you a while ago, objective authenticity is about interacting with authentic, preserved artifact from the past. In a living heritage site, yes, you can visit the real building, the real landscape when a battle took place. You may see real artifacts preserved in a museum collection, but the digital game, it will only be about digital representations of authentic objects. The conclusion I'd like to leave you with on this slide is that authenticity is multidimensional and selective. It's probably impossible to create an experience that would be highly authentic in all 5 dimensions. You have to select what you want to engage your audience with. Of course, it depends on technology, on the genre, but also on the budget. Games. Let's have games. How I use this model to analyze games. Whenever I study authenticity, dimensions of authenticity in a digital game, I ask the following question. First, act and bodily feelings authenticity. What kind, if any, what kind of physical activity does the game afford? To the player, not the character, to the player. Feelings, self-making. What aspects of player's self, well, the imaginary target audience player self are engaged with in the game story. Relate interpersonal authenticity. The question is, what kind of shared experiences in the game and around the game are facilitated? Constructive authenticity of the think type. The question is, what kind of information, narrative, game mechanics are provided for recognition and for interpretation? And sense, immediate perception of sights, sounds, smells, and touch. How are these senses stimulated in the game? Yeah, I will repeat it to avoid misunderstandings. Thinking and sensing may also be involved in the objective way when we are meeting original artifact from the past, but it needs physical presence, physical object. It's not possible in a digital game. And this leads us to finally a demonstration of how this works on the example of Beast. Will the clicker follow my guidance? Yes, Beast falls proper. There is some delay in the clicker probably. I take a short break to play the Beast trailer. If you haven't played, if you haven't seen it yet, this is the moment, and we'll continue after this short break. Maybe we could kill the lights for a while. Let there be light. Okay. Beast and act. It's not about acting, not about actors, it's about physical action, right? Action performance. This allows for the creation of bodily feelings, bodily felt, existential authenticity, if you can somehow stimulate the player through bodily action. In Beast, we don't do that. What the player does in terms of physical activities is simply you click on icons, you click on buttons in the user interface, you click on options in the menus. There is no agility-based challenge, no hand-eye coordination, no lightning-fast response. It's not this kind of game. So we're not trying to create any kind of authenticity felt in the body through physical action. Well, there is always some layer of physicality, of so-called embodiment, in the fact that your body reacts with a quicker heartbeat, for example, to a narrative tension. You can get really scared, you can get sweaty palms, you can feel hungry when you're looking at the delicious food on screen, etc. You can get sexually aroused when you're watching porn, you can get embarrassed if you are looking at the character getting humiliated and embarrassed socially. It's not only a mental simulation. Any kind of mental simulation also evokes some echo of related feelings in the body. So this level of embodiment is always there. And yeah, that's all I can say about the sensation of physical action in the beast. You can only feel this echo watching the character do things. Is it possible in the video games to stimulate the player through acting? Yes. And now we are switching the perspective to design. As a designer, what are the options you have at your disposal if you want to consider the possibility of bodily feelings, authenticity? Let's take Death from Above, a recent game in which you are a drone operator. You are in control of a Ukrainian military drone which drops bombs on Russian troops. There is a high correlation between the player's manual operations with your hands on the gamepad, which controls the drone, and you control the drone watching the camera feed from the drone on your computer screen. It's very much like the physical body of the real drone operator, who also has a handheld device with joysticks and operates the drone watching the camera feed. In this way, you can create a high degree of correlation which translates into this perceived authenticity of the manual experience. For Honor, that's a game which is based on fencing. You are a medieval fighter, a knight, a samurai, a Viking, different options. The point is that you are actually making fencing maneuvers with a mouse and keyboard, and you have to do perfect timing of these maneuvers. When you are confronting another player, it is a real duel between your response time and your precision in manual operation that works on the mouse. A former student of mine, with whom we wrote a paper on fencing in For Honor and Hellish Court, says that when he uses the mouse, he activates the same muscles that he does when he practices the real fencing. Because we both have also actual fencing experience. For me, it's a past experience. He is still a hardcore fencing nerd, and he says For Honor is perfect in stimulating this battle of perception and reaction time and decision making which happens in actual fencing. Even though it's just, moving your arm and the mouse. But the correlation between the muscles in the arm holding the mouse is to some degree transferable to the operations of a hand wielding a sword. And this can be said about any game in which this reaction time, your muscle action on the game controls, corresponds with muscle action on the character on screen. You could also think of specially designed interfaces that can maximize this correlation between what your body as a player does and what the character's body does on screen. Guitar-shaped controller in Guitar Hero is one example. Or steering wheel with pedals in a car racing game. Or Wii Sports, even one step further in this correlation, because it's based on camera and motion sensor. You are actually throwing a punch in the air, and the game makes the character throw a punch more or less at the same time. Okay, punching is still a far removed from the actual experience because you are punching the air. It's nothing like punching an enemy. But think about dancing. Dancing to the camera, making the dance moves on Wii Sports. Do we have dancing on Wii Sports? Not sure, but there are games that give you points for performing dance moves to the camera. So this is one dimension, one design space which can be used to facilitate the sensation, physical sensation of authenticity through the body. Yes, let's talk about senses. You saw the trailer, so you could see that the game has high detail, realistic visuals. In cutscenes, it is coupled with audio. Audio is not so detailed, but you can see that the main sense to stimulate the player to try to create the impression that it is an authentic representation of a historical setting, quasi-historical setting, is done on the visual side. It's hard to separate sense from think in this case, because, well, the judgment whether the building you can see on screen is authentic to the region and historical period requires your knowledge, your thinking. But first you have to see the building through your eyesight. So you see the thing and you make judgments based on your knowledge. It happens at the same time. With combined sense and thing, they together create the sense of constructive authenticity. Landscape, objects, animals, everything that is shown in realistic visuals on screen, when it is compared to what you know about the Carpathian Mountains in terms of landscape, it doesn't even require historical knowledge. If you know the Carpathians, you can recognize the type of landscapes. It feels authentic because you know what authentic Carpathians, what real Carpathians look like. In terms of historical architecture and costume, yes, this requires knowledge which has to be trained. It's not available to everyone. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself because the visit to Carpathian is not available to everyone either. But what I wanted to say that some elements of knowledge required for judgment of authenticity are easily accessible. It just requires no traveling or watching tourist videos. Identifying historical costume, historical weaponry requires specific, specialized, narrowly defined studies. It's not just a casual tourist experience. It needs education. So one thing we can say is that the Beast tries to paints a highly realistic, potentially authentic visual representation of the historical and geographical setting with a but. The but is the magical transformation into the Beast, and also you could probably see in the picture sometimes when the character's insanity goes high, the sanity meter goes up, the visual depiction of the environment is changing as well. We have red filters, we have smoke, we have hallucinatory audio like mysterious whispers. We have enemies, human enemies adopting monstrous looks. In this way, well, it is a heavy step away from historical or realistic authenticity. Clicker works. What does it look like? What may it look like in other games? Yeah, just like in Beast, the first thing you use to judge or to create the sense of authenticity in video games is visuals and audio. You can make it realistic, which means based on the real life experience of the human audience. You can also use gamepad vibrations to stimulate the sense of touch. We don't have that in Beast. I mentioned For Honor and its simulation of fencing, of action response time when you're parrying enemy blows. What can be said about Hellish Court, another game about fencing, is that it perfectly uses gamepad vibration to convey the sensation of blade contact, not just hitting the enemy. This is usual. This happens in many games of this kind, and when you hit the target, then the gamepad vibrates. In Hellish Court, when you cross blades with another and the blades are contacting, you can feel that in the gamepad. Also, my friend fencing nerd was super enthusiastic about it. The first game ever that makes it possible to feel the blade. So we can do that. Well, you can also remember about this hidden feature, hidden characteristic of narrative experience, which I mentioned a few slides before, that we can try to rely on this psychosomatic echo that is generated in the body when we are mentally simulating something. So you can try to replace sensory experience with description. You can't create a sense of smell or taste in a digital game, but you can write a narrative text, which is a clever, detailed, juicy description, for example, of the smell and taste of oranges. Everyone who knows what oranges taste like probably can be enticed by a nice description to pretend or to actually experience an illusion of a smell and taste. At least you will remember the experience of the taste and smell. So narrative writing can be a supplement for sensory stimulation, which cannot be done directly. Thinking. Okay, this, as I said, is the most complex part. I need to check the time. Yeah, right. I think we are good on schedule. Constructive authenticity of any content, text, visuals, whatever is available for interpretation, as in our case, a representation of the historical setting, is judged in the following aspects. First of all, factual accuracy of historical geographical information. Do we have names of real places? Do these places look like they did in this historical period? We know that architecture changes. If we read about leaders, generals, battles, discoveries, artists, plagues, are these historical facts or creative fiction? So, in other words, accuracy is an aspect of authenticity in this framework. We could also look at visual and also functional accuracy of objects, buildings, peoples. Like, do we have, for example, a proper representation of social structure in a given region? If it was inhabited by people of 5 cultures, do we get traces, evidence of all 5 cultures present in the region? Then, situational realism of represented events. Is it realistic for these things to happen? In this way, in this point, we are talking about the realism of fiction. If you have clearly fictitious characters and they're having adventures, are these adventures something that could have happened in this historical environment? An aspect of that is psychological believability of characters, character behavior, character motivations. And yet another aspect, realism of physics. This can be judged on the basis of the actual game experience, but it can also be judged or built judgment of constructive authenticity can be enhanced if you take into account texts which are not the game itself but are publisher information. Or you read developer diaries and the developer tells you about decisions they made concerning the level of historical accuracy they wanted to achieve. For example, you can learn, even from me at the end of the talk, what things in Beast are deliberately anachronistic or non-historical or even physically impossible, and we know that, and yet we decided to have it in the game because there is a creative agenda that requires otherwise, or because the game designers felt it is better for the gameplay experience. Or, well, we can talk about it in the end. It's the last slide with all the juicy piece examples of, for example, Akira here wearing plate armor from helmet to the knee and fighting in the mountains, going on a long journey across the mountains on foot, wearing this 30 kilo of steel. And, well, there have been many concessions to gameplay experience or to budget, more to the vision of the visual artist that, well, prevailed over the drive or the willingness to be historically accurate. And you can find information about that in so-called paratexts, text written about the game by developers, by publishers, by reviewers and players. We have a name, I don't know if we, but at least in the academic circles, we have a name for this branch of games which always make design decisions in favor of historical accuracy. We call them historiographical games. In these games, historical accuracy reigns supreme, and all these choices whether to make something more historical or more playable would prefer the historical part. Beast is not like that. In my subjective judgment of how this constructive authenticity plays out in Beast would be like that. We do have a high factual accuracy of geographical and historical information. We do have a little bit of alternate history, like a new small principality and a new leader, new king emerging in northern Transylvania, and a little bit of fictional historical timeline connected to his ascent to the throne. But beside that, everything else and everything that happened before is based on my historical research. But it doesn't mean that I make no errors or mistakes. Maybe I did, but whatever I put in character backstories, whatever battles, political events, historical events are mentioned in character conversations, it's always based on historical research, to the best of my knowledge. We have mixed accuracy of objects, buildings, landscapes, and peoples. For example, costumes are pretty accurate in the details of what they look like, costumes and armor, but functionality isn't. Did I mention that heavy armor is not a problem if you hike in the mountains? I have a few more examples of this saved for the last slide, so you need to wait for that. About situational realism, we have moderate social realism. Why moderate? We don't design any illogical events, but there is a technical limitation. How many fighters do we have under our command on the battlefield on each level? Up to 5. It's just a limitation we took. But you can have recruited 10 people. You have 10 soldiers traveling with you, but when a battle commences, you only have 5. You choose which ones take part in the battle, but the others are, well, by default, okay, they're left behind in the rear guard, but, well, we never explain it. It cannot be logically explained why you can never bring the entire warband to the battlefield. It's not socially realistic. And yeah, there is no medical realism in healing, wounding, healing. I don't even need to discuss the details. It's game convention that whatever wounds you take on the next level, everyone is at full health again. And there is the beast, bestial transformation. How can this be biologically realistic? I don't know if, Piotr, are you listening to me right now? Can we tell the audience the real nature of the beast? Okay. It's something I think we never explicitly mentioned in the game, but the creative agenda behind this bestial transformation is that it is all hallucinations of the main character. It's not real. It's not really happening in the physical world. It's just PTSD, war trauma, religious fanaticism. So there is actually less unrealistic happenings in the lore, but players don't know it. And yeah, finally we have relatively low realism of physics and other laws of nature. Rain, loading weapons is too easy, loading gunpowder, black gunpowder weapons, etc. You can find some information about that in Paratext. There are some interviews with us published on game media, so in addition to the game, you can read the Paratext. Probably you will remember my secret information about the hallucinatory nature of the bestial transformation. That's also paratextual addition, the lecture we are having now. Okay, feeling and its translation to so-called self-making existential authenticity. I have to divide it into two parts. The first part is pretty trivial, because it happens in every game. I told you that practicing activities related to an identity that you hold dear confirms that identity. So if you play a game, any game, you are performing your identity as a gamer. In this particular case, if you play Beast, you can perform your identity as a fan of tactical turn-based games or horror RPGs. We have both these elements. If you include the Beast experience into a specific role as a streamer, as a game critic, journalist, reviewer, also this engagement with the Beast speaks to resonate with your identity, your trait as this particular type of gamer. We could also think about the willingness to play Beast or to buy Beast just to support Polish games or to support indie games. But as I said, this is pretty trivial because it's based on the genre, on the game, on the nationality, etc. What is more interesting to discuss in terms of historical authenticity is based on the theme. How can the content of the game, the story, the heritage hidden in history resonate with people's identities? One dimension of this special meaning can be generated by a religious, ethnic, national identity. People who play the game, they can see their own heritage or the region their parents come from represented in the game. Especially to people in Eastern Europe who feel underrepresented in video games, it's something that gets noticed. But finally, we have a game in which you could play on the battlefields of Eastern Europe. It rarely happens. We have a strong plot around the relationship between the protagonist and his estranged daughter. Scenes, conflicts, drama, misunderstandings between father and daughter. Also, in the case of another pair, we have King Lurius, our mad king prophet, and his son who rebels against the father. There's a lot of family drama in our game, and this can speak to people's actual experience. Another dimension of confirming your identity, your true self, is, as I said, making moral judgments, ethical judgments of the content. You are a person who doesn't accept this kind of behavior, or you are a person who enjoys playing with this kind of controversial, transgressive behavior. And you can position yourself in relation to this content. I think we have time for an anecdote. Yeah, not much time. Enough. Yeah, we had a tense conversation with one of our actresses when we were coming back on the car from mock-up sessions. She was silent for a long time, and then she asked, "Are you really such antichrists, all of you?" Because I'm not. And we had well, we said that no, we don't really care about that. We use this theme of religion fanaticism as a historical and cultural resource. But eventually she said that, okay, she may be in the game because she's only doing mock-up sessions. Her face will not be in the game as long as it's just the voice and the movements on mock-up sessions. It's acceptable, but if she were to reveal her face on screen as a film actress, she wouldn't have agreed to star in such a production. Or let's reverse that. Metal music and the Batushka band. If you hear well, the metal beats, or you can recognize Batushka, it's also something that resonates with yourself, your true self, self-making as a fan of the game, of the genre. In other games it's similar. Genre-based, this trivial part always happens. You play a game, it confirms that you're a gamer. If you play a particular genre or theme, it speaks to your preferences. This is your true self. You like this kind, you don't like other kinds. You may also get involved with these games from a specific ethical, social activist position. For example, you may like the fact that the game has accessibility features because you are an activist for accessibility. Some examples of games which strongly rely on a particular theme to speak to a person's philosophical stances. Depression Quest, a game simulating depression experience and also promoting proper ways such as medication, therapy, diagnosis, ways to deal with the Depression Quest. This would be appreciated. This message, this mission would speak to anyone who cares about the cause of mental health promotion. Ukraine War Stories is an interactive fiction visual novel about civilian experience of war trauma in Ukraine. So this can resonate with everyone. Well, probably it resonates the most intensely with people who have experienced the war, or others who have experienced another war. And in the longest distance, someone who simply cares about civilian experience. Never Alone is a game based on indigenous culture, the Inuits. This speaks to someone, well, someone who comes from this culture would find themselves their own heritage. Someone who is not Inuit but is also an indigenous person could also feel their cause is similar, even though the tribe, the region is not. And a white activist who supports the cause even though they're not indigenous, also to some degree can find common ground, their own concerns reflected in the game. And relations in Beast. Again, there is this trivial part which always happens, genre-based relation with the community. We always have a part of communal sharing of the game experience when you write reviews, when you see yourself in rankings on Steam, when you communicate with other gamers on Discord. We have a Discord, we have Steam players. We also have content creators on Twitch. That's an extension of the game to interpersonal communal sharing. It's specific theme-based, interpersonally created authenticity. It's, for example, in the heritage of the Polish, Lithuanian Commonwealth. Myself and Piotr, as creative director, have been involved with this heritage for a long time as non-digital role players, as historical reenactors. Actually, probably the reason why I was invited to do writing for the game was because Piotr knew that I was familiar with the setting. So it is meaningful to us. And it is meaningful to interpersonally shared activities we performed as reenactors, as tabletop players, etc. Remember, it has two dimensions. If you are just playing alone and feeling personal connection, it's self-making, individual authenticity. But once you share this experience with someone like-minded, it becomes interpersonal as well. It's about sharing. Another sharing and communal camaraderie, like-mindedness may be felt on the level of metal music, gothic aesthetics. And another part which spills from the gamer community to the academic community is my own academic studies on Polish history in games. Beast is included among other games that I publish about. In other games, the trivial part is the same. Sorry, wrong slide. Yeah, but on the right side, the genre-based relations, the trivial part is also the same. Reviews, rankings, etc. But a huge difference happens if it's a multiplayer game. Then you have a whole new dimension, a whole new space for interpersonal sharing when you're playing with others in online or in a local network. So essentially, as I said, any content that is personally meaningful and can trigger this self-making authenticity, finding your true self in the game experience, can always become enhanced by a shared relationship-based authenticity. If you talk about with others, they will understand, they will comment on that, you get a feedback loop. And why does it matter? How does it often happen? It often happens when the personal meaning you find in the game stems from the fact that it activates something which is relevant to your collective identity as a person of certain ethnicity, nationality, professional experience, life experience, like parent, war survivor, etc. So this is like a feedback loop. As your personal identity, as a person, you have your identity shaped from multiple collective identities which are shared interpersonally. You can experience it in a single player game alone, just confirming your own identity. This would be strictly limited to self-making authenticity in this personally felt sense, but it also can extend, somehow come back to communal sharing when there is a game which activates the heritage of Poland or Lithuania, and we talk about the game to people who are historical reenactors and we know them from other practices around that heritage. To sum up, Beastial authenticities. In physical action, we made no attempt at creation of bodily feelings authenticity. In the immediate sensory perception, we work on high visual realism and supporting audio, but no attempt at touch, smell, or taste, only verbal descriptions of that. In this most complex, constructive, intellectually judged authenticity, we have a high realism of settings and characters. Carpathian Polish settings can be recognized by anyone who knows a little bit about the history and geography. We have high psychological realism, at least we tried. You can be the judge of that. But we have moderate to low social realism of group behavior and low functional realism of weapon effects, item use, etc., and human biology. In terms of feeling, we have a strong presence of local history and heritage, which can be, as I tried to explain a second ago, which can be experienced individually by just a single person playing the game. This is self-making, individual self-making, but it can also be talked about, shared with others. With what kind of others? Usually about this kind of others who can relate to the same kind of heritage and identity. So feeling and relating sort of go hand in hand. Another dimension is family tragedy. Another thing which I should have put here is the religious thing. People can also strongly feel about the fact that we have no respect for religion. In our game, religion is the source of conflict, it's the source of trauma and suffering, and it is often revealed as fake, as a scam, as a manipulation. So people who are religious, they probably have problems. Not to mention that we have blatantly satanic aesthetics. Yeah, we don't have time for that, a little bit of hardcore boring theory, but what I want to tell you that in my dual framework, these authenticities also translate into game immersions. Column C is forms of involvement in games by one game scholar, Gordon Kalea. He doesn't like the name immersion, he prefers the name involvement, but they talk about the same thing. And Sarah and Bowman, talking about role-playing games specifically, develop these levels of immersion. They can always be translated to the 5 verbs from experiential marketing. So as a design tool, if we want to create heritage, historical authenticity and existential authenticity, coupled with high immersion, we could be working with this model to guide our design decisions. Yeah, probably the clicker died down. Okay, I will skip the last 2 slides because maybe this one I tried to demonstrate on these slides where narrative design and the writing can be applied to its highest potential. And as you can guess, it's not in the physical action. You can only include supplementary descriptions. And it's not so much in sensory perception. You can try to supplement it through description, but it's never the same as direct exposure through the sense. So it is in the thinking and in the feel/relate dimension when you can use narrative design, which means world building and character creation and emplotment, the creation of narrative structures. So Beast has character biographies, dialogues, AI barks, internal monologues of the protagonist. Also, Anton, the protagonist, has passages of retrospective storytelling. Sometimes it's his internal thought we are following, but sometimes it is his voice as he is narrating the events after the fact, from a retrospective position. And also, as the writer, I created a lot of lore documents which were never published because it's not the kind of text that was supposed to be player-facing. It was about the description of the world for the development team. Also, as a writer, you can work a lot about consciously thinking about things which are meaningful to people's identities. It may be narrowly targeted to people of a specific culture and heritage, but you may also play on so-called universal human experiences such as birth, death, love, parenthood, etc. Right, and this is the last slide I promised. Some snippets which could be extended into anecdotes and discussions, but we don't have time for that. Let's say it is a story of me proposing historically accurate things or physically logical things to be implemented or to be modified. And sometimes the development team decided to do it the historical way, but most of the time, at least on this slide, most of the time I had to back off with my historical tendencies because it would be too expensive or too boring or too something to keep it accurate. For example, I dug out a huge book, academic book about history of wooden architecture in the Marmaros region. It's now Romania, it used to be Transylvania, doesn't matter. Some of these visual references made it into the game. It was a useful resource. Although I guess we have a lot of wooden architecture which does not follow the model. But historically accurate architecture of the region made it in. On the other hand, there is a city in the middle of the game which didn't exist historically. It was just a small village back then. Now it is a city. Back then it was just a small village. But, well, the game designer wanted a progression of gameplay. First we had fights on the road, fights in the villages, and we were, or the players were up for combat in the streets. No city, just invented the fact that, okay, in this alternate history, this small village underwent rapid growth. Doesn't matter. We put a city, a developed city where there were none in the region. Another case, Krakow, the royal castle of Wawel. We recreated a model of the Wawel castle. It is there. Sometimes you can see it from the distance atop a hill, and there is no city by it. No Krakow. Krakow disappeared from our visual representation. Electric light. Sometimes I looked at visual description of visual representation of roadside inn in the evening, and well, bright light shines from the windows. It would never have looked like that with natural light, electric light. I mentioned the Kirashir guy on foot, 30 kilo of armor, plate armor, helmet, breastplate, backplate, leg protection, up for hundreds of kilometers on foot. Game mechanics for matchlock guns. If you know the technology of matchlock weapons, wheel lock is just a clockwork mechanism. You can load it, pull it out from the holster and fire. A matchlock gun, it needs a cord which has to be lit. There is a small fire on it. You have to physically light a fire to light the fuse to put it into the weapon. We don't have this kind of difference. Normally, if I were to translate into game mechanics, I would introduce as an extra action you would need to spend to light the fuse. Only then you would fire the gun. It wasn't accepted as a viable gameplay mechanism. We also have matchlock pistols in the game. Historically, we never had matchlock pistols in our region. Reloading mechanics. Sometimes there are some special mechanics. If you are a skilled shooter, you can fire twice without reloading. Physically not possible. Reloading mechanics not in melee. This is something I reported, and it was used, it was changed. When you are in melee with an enemy, you cannot reload the gun while you are in the range of his weapons. In the first version it was possible. You had several actions. Even though you were standing in the melee, you could simply pull out your pistol, slowly load it, shoot it in the face of the enemy. It was still your turn. Yeah, world map and distances, they were completely unrealistic, but we decided that it would be too difficult, too expensive to make the distances between items on the map corresponding with real geography. And the last thing is expanding bullets. It's like Doom bullets. It's the largest concession I made, but I did it myself because the designer asked me to come up with an advanced type of ammunition to gunpowder weapons. I never heard of one. I recall that in the 19th century, we had doom bullets. You could especially cut bullets so they would expand on impact. I thought maybe, just maybe, it could be possible with lead bullets. I did some research. No fucking way. No way you could make expanding bullets from lead balls. Nonetheless, yeah, I didn't come up with a better idea. So finally, expanding bullets, physically absolutely impossible, are in the game. And yes, at this memory, I think I've had enough for today. Thank you for your attention. But let me finish the sentence. I wanted to invite Piotr Pacynko on stage because we are ready to take questions. Well, me to the lecture, but if you have questions about the game not related to writing, Piotr would be the best person to take them. So, Piotr Pacynko, creative director and CEO of False Prophet, and my dear friend.
How did the Batushka collaboration happen?
Hello, my name is Piotr Pacynko, nice to meet you. Collaboration with Batushka. I know Krzysztof Drabikowski and I asked him to, can I buy your music from the latest album to our trailers? And he said, yes, you can, but there is more in this story. And I can't say too much because for a full release of the game, we want to have a black metal, dark ambient original score, and it will be created by, I can't say who.
Thanks for the answer.
But you can imagine.
So, as far as the playtest went, we had a presentation of and okay, we had a presentation of combat and some narrative, some cutscenes, and it was really enjoyable. But I was wondering, will there be a third gameplay plane? Like, will there be some camp management or something like that? Because I feel like those elements are a little bit much separate. Will there, the narrative tells of a journey, but will there be some element of this journey in the game itself?
I can answer this question, thank you. If you play the game, you will encounter the core gameplay loop, which is you start in the campfire, like camp. You can manage your squad. We call them warband. So you can change your weapons, equipment, items, talk with your companions, recruit new one, and then when you are ready, you need to pick up 4. That will go with Anton. And so next step is a combat mission, and then after the combat mission, you have a cutscene or something like this, and then go back to the camp. At the beginning, when we started designing this game, there was also something like a world map. I call it, for the sake of the game design, I call it medieval Google Earth, because my inspiration was it will look like Google Earth, but we see this 16th century road in the Carpathian Mountains. And the fun fact is that we didn't make it. Let's say it's in the game, but it's too heavy to optimize it when it comes to graphics. So that's why we skip this point. So there is camp, fight, no world map, so we can pick up next encampments or battles. But the fun fact is that Michał helped me with dividing this, not dividing, but we know the merchants' trails from 16th century. We did a lot of research, especially Michał, on history, on Carpathian Mountains, and we can go there. Not today because there is a war in Ukraine, but we would love to go there and go this route because it's historical route, let's say, and in the game. That's why I miss this feature, because it will be really nice to see this world map in the game, so you can feel that you are in the mountains and you can go this route someday, maybe. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Although, if I may chip in, speaking of historical authenticity, the route is historical, but its visual representation is heavily modified. For example, the visual artist or maybe Piotr wanted to have real mountains, rocky, steep slopes, snow on the tops. Well, in reality, there are pretty low, grassy mounds. This kind of not very serious mountains, so they look differently in the game.
Without a question, I can add one thing that I think it's interesting for you guys because of this lecture today. Michał said a lot about decision that we need to make. We take things from the history, culture, literature, movies, and life, and then we need to create a video game that, for me, it needs to has some kind of authenticity in it. So I like it because I'm passionate about the history, and it's really tough to make a decision like, okay, you can't create a system when the weather, for example, rain, can affect your matchlock pistol because it will be too cost heavy, for example. And there is a lot of decisions that I need to make like this as a creative director and game director, and I don't know what I'm doing there as a producer also. And I would love to create a game that it's 100% accurate, but it's almost impossible. And I think it will be boring, and it will be simulator, and I hate simulators, so I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a question. Okay, thanks for presentation, and I have like two-part question. The first one is, what came first, the goal to make a turn-based RPG, or desire to tell like this story of a hero who has like PTSD? And just to expand on this question, why did you chose to go with such narrative themes like PTSD and the idea of like religion being the root of the problem?
I told you, you stick to the mic, because I've been talking for an hour. People.
You can sit down. I will take the mic.
I think, yeah, you could take over.
Okay. Thank you for that question. I was waiting for this question for 5 years, probably. The first was the idea, the story. I wrote down the treatment, like 7 pages, when I was not in Carpathian Mountains, but in Beskid Niski. And I saw the Orthodox church. We call it cerkvia, and there were some funeral prayers there. And that was the main inspiration for Beast. And for 1 week, I created the whole plot, all characters and the whole world for Beast, and that was the very beginning. And in the same time, I was asking my friends who wants to join me in this adventure to create a new game dev studio, and that was in 2019. And the turn-based tactical RPG, that was a production-wise decision, because I knew that it will be really hard to create an RPG, like open world RPG or something like a Witcher. I was taught in a game dev school in Warsaw for a year that you shouldn't create RPG game as the first game, as a studio. So I couldn't do that. But believe me, I would love to create a game like a Witcher or something like this in this setting and with that story. So going back to the question, yes, the turn-based tactical RPG, that was production-wise. I thought it will be easier to create a game like this. It wasn't.
Okay, thanks. And can you expand on the narrative side? Why did you go with the idea of a hero who has PTSD, so that you've spoiled us the story?
Okay, yes, of course I can. What to say? In that time, in 2019, it was really my personal experience to be in this PTSD situation. So I know a lot about the depression and anxiety, and I was on treatment, like psychological treatment or something like this, for the months and then years, and then that's why I decided to get into this topic more deeply, and because I can say it. I'm recorded. So I'm sorry. I can't say it right now. I can say it later. But because I'm interested in religions, I made my own research about human mind and how the religion can affect your health and especially your mind, and that was so interesting for me. That's why it's the topic of the game, and I believe as a person that everyone has a beast inside. So it's not just a game, it's a reality. And you can do it what you want with it, but it's better to... I'm sorry, I will add only one thing to that. Have anyone played the game? Not yet, but not the whole story. You don't know the whole story. So there will be a spoiler. Because I just want to say that that's also in the game, that it's really easy to follow your beast, to kill people, to be mad, to be crazy, to be like a killing machine, and the game will do everything to somehow encourage you to be a beast, to transform into the beast. But at the end of the game, you will probably see that it wasn't the best idea to do it, and that's why you need to play once again. And this time you need to try to tame your beast and to exercise your beast, or which is the real. It's the real challenge in the game. You need to stay in the middle, like in life.
Thank you.
We have a couple more minutes. question about the lecture. We talked about the 5 like pillars of authenticity, and I have a question, a personal question maybe, because you talked both about games that have all 5 of them and games that focus solely on one purpose, like maybe not only one purpose, but are mainly one thing. And which games do you prefer? Which games do you prefer to like enjoy, and which games do you prefer to create? Do you prefer creating a game that is focused on like delivering a especially good aspect of act or feel or something, or do you like enjoy doing a game like this where you have to try to balance things out?
If it's personal about my own preference, I don't like, or I don't have much experience with games that use haptic controls and a lot of physical movement, so I'm more of a sit-down player type. And that's why I don't have experience, I don't have preference for bodily feelings activity type in digital games. Also, I like the historical reenactment when you would take a saber and go to the battlefield and spar with the people. Well, I would wear chainmail and stuff. I also like this kind of experience, but not in digital gaming. So that's my angle, and I think it's a general preference. People who are very physically involved in gameplay, who prefer now Dance Dance Revolution, this kind of stuff, they would be attracted to games with heavy physical experience. People like me would prefer the sit-down version. But when it comes to the other dimensions, they can be active at the same time. And I think that the best game, the most powerful impact a game can make, if it stimulates you through all these channels. If it is pleasant or realistic in its visual and audio, so you can have a feeling that this is the actual environment, as if you could touch it. And it has themes meaningful to you personally. You could connect to the themes. And it also has a community of players who care about the same values, care about the same themes, such as heritage, national, regional heritage in our case. And you could also be involved with the players in the game and in the community around the game. Yeah, so coming full circle, I could reiterate that the only single difference is between physical controllers, physical action, versus games such as the Beast, which require no hand-eye coordination, no bodily feelings, immediate translation to the character's experience. What do you think?
Because I know about this theory of Michał from years, I just want to say that we discussed the game in which you can not only read about the senses, like what you see, what you hear, but also about smells. But in my opinion on that was, it's too much for a player to read about what you feel, what you see, what you do, and what you can sense by your nose, for example. It's too much. I don't like. I'm a writer for video games, but I don't like reading games. And on the other side, I want to say that I try to use this theory in Beast, because as a collector's edition for Beast, we created a box that includes a perfume and a tea bowl made from like thrown on pottery wheel, and a few other things, because I thought that it will be nice to touch something that can remind you of this Carpathian Mountains ruins, and pottery was really good to it, and the perfume was the best, because we invented the smell that we called insanity scent. So it starts with metal, blood, sweat, body, leather, and it's really powerful at the beginning when you use it, and after that it's going like a beast off, and it's just like herbs, scent. It's like an old monastery or church, Orthodox church smell, and I think it's good. And from what I know, people love it as like addition to the game, so they can smell the idea of the game. I hope that
Thank you. Yes.
somehow helps you.
Thank you, kind gentlemen, for your presentation. My question will be, and it's perfect that both of you at the stage right now, because I'd like to hear from both sides. First one, where it's better to sacrifice authenticity for the gameplay purposes, and the opposite, where you can't sacrifice authenticity for the gameplay aspects. And I guess first question should go to creative director, and second one to the one who wrote the story.
It should be because normally Michał say, okay, it was like this, and we
This
need to writer. So I need to combine the story, dialogues and everything with a gameplay, and I take care of the player experience, and Michał takes care of the player's character experience in the game.
So let's say top three situations where you like examples where it's applicable.
So to clarify,
Yeah.
the division is not that I wrote the story. We both wrote the story. Actually, Piotr invented the story. When I was brought in, I was given a story treatment, like 7 pages, when the main intrigue, main characters, main story, story world. It was already designed by Piotr. I just expanded it from 7 to 200 pages, adding dialogues and minor scenes, but most of the narrative design in terms of story idea and story world is Piotr's. And my answer is pretty simple. There are no limits. Like, everything can be done, everything can be sacrificed. If we brought in expanding bullets made of lead balls, everything is possible.
You want 3 examples?
Yeah, I would like 3 examples for both situations, if
Both
possible.
situations. There was a lot of things like this in the process, so I don't want to talk only about the examples, but just more about the process.
Because why I'm positioning question like this, because to avoid those vagueness, where it's we've been discussing la la la. No, it's like this was the situation and we're kind of fighting for it, and this is how we get out of it.
So I'm in my company. I'm in that position that I don't need to fight. So thing that you can take out from this conference and this panel is, if you want to invent things in your game, you need to be the owner of the company in the game. In the other case, there is no argument that it's good to say we need that in the game, or we don't that we shouldn't have that in the game. Like, it's always a matter of opinion, and I know a lot of producers who take care of the financial part of video game production, and they will never say you that I like this feature or I don't like this feature. They will just say we can't afford this. It means they don't like this. So you don't want to be in a position in which you only suggest things, but you can't decide what will be in the game at the end. And on top of that, I can add one information, like an insight. I always say because I was a lead writer in CI games, so I work with narrative designers and other writers. And I always say, it doesn't matter what you write in the documentation. The most important thing is what the player will see in the game. So we can talk a lot about everything, and we can exchange arguments, what should be in the game, but I like to discuss things, but I like this moment when I can say no, and then we need to go this way, and everyone follows this way, and from that moment, everyone is a preacher of that new idea, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, if you wanted examples, I could mention. You've got a few on this slide. For example, that Kirasier guy. I just encouraged the team to go for a writer character who would have a much lighter armor, but they liked visually the fully clad iron guy better, so visual preference prevailed. Because my role in this game, apart from writing, was historical consulting, and consultant does not make decisions. I just provide observations. If we want to be historically accurate or if we want to be logical, it should be like that. And sometimes it makes sense to think, sometimes it doesn't, and I don't need to fight because it's not my decision. For example, reloading. If I were designing the mechanics of shooting and reloading, I would have never made a decision to shoot twice without reloading. Like my sense of physical and logical coherence wouldn't allow it. But it's not my call. And I don't have a problem that it is in a game. I notice that. I can see that it's highly unrealistic, but I totally accept the fact that, well, I've heard it many times, it's just a game.
I can add one thing. For example, because I do reenactment, I know how to reload the much like pistol, or how to reload the musket, and what's the difference, how to use a lot of things like that. And I'm also a director during the mock-up sessions, and I spent probably too much time trying to show my actor how to do it. Of course, after many hours that you can imagine, we spent a lot of money on it. He make it in a good way. So the gun was reloaded. And after that, we didn't use this animation. It was too long. So that's the moments when you need to think, okay, I need to stop thinking about what's real or what's not. It's just a game.
Thank you.
So as the event designer, I will have to now enforce my authority to be on schedule. I think there are a lot of questions in the room, but I think we can take these questions and move them over for a glass of wine all together over here. So at this point, I would like to thank Michał and Piotr for this amazing talk and amazing QA. So give it up for them, please. So, just before you head over to the bar, we're having an event next month, 6th of April, where we're going to have an expert on genre theory and video games. It's going to be basically the same formula as you already know it here. But if you want to know when it's going to happen, add me up on LinkedIn. I'll invite you to the event, or follow the Austrian Forum on Facebook. Thank you all for coming and asking interesting questions. And yeah, thanks to you. Thanks.